Bit to the side.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Sandy Glaze. I'm a personal transformation and self-development coach for those who are new to the channel. And I have with me today Father David Todor. And I met David, I saw him online on his Twitter account, I think it was. And he also was one of the speakers in the lineup on the Million March for Children rally in Kitchener. And we made contact, and I thought it'd be great for him to be able to share his message with my audience as well. So good morning, David. How are you?
Sandy, thank you so much. Good morning. It's great to be here. And I'm really glad that you reached out and were able to make this happen.
Yes, so am I. There's so much happening in the KW, the Tri-Cities region, and a lot of this ties together. But what you had talked a lot about was what's going on in the schools. So there's certain words we can't mention here. The P word, we
Okay.
don't mention this just because I put this up on YouTube. I forgot to mention that to you beforehand. But you had said you've gone into the Waterloo District School Board and presented there. And I think I saw one of your video clips of that. Someone had recorded it. Can you tell me what's going on with the Waterloo District School Board?
Absolutely. The Waterloo District School Board has been making headlines and all for the wrong reasons. Right now, in terms of the gender ideology aspect, they got a lot of explicit books in the library that are not age appropriate. Dare I say, I don't even think that they should be in the library, even, for the kids who are 16, because these books are not self-help therapy books.
No, they're not.
They're pretty graphic, they're pretty descriptive. And I found out about these books because a teacher named Carolyn Brajowski, she delegated at the Waterloo District School Board in 2022, January. And she exposed these books, and then they ended up deleting that video online. Well, I ended up finding the video and I watched it, and I just couldn't believe the way the board was behaving. Since then, I've been looking a little bit more into the Waterloo District School Board, the kind of books that they have, the kind of procedures that they pass. And not only do they have inappropriate material, but they are also having inappropriate discussions with minors and constantly soliciting minors on disclosing their sexuality. They're inviting other organizations to talk with the minors as well. And all of this in their procedures, it's done in secrecy. So they're really driving a wedge between parents and their kids. And these procedures, they're upheld by the director. All the school boards have a director, and the director of education um, over here at the Waterloo District School Board, Jiwan Chanika, he upholds these procedures. And the procedures are a little bit different than policies. Policies are open to public scrutiny, and they're kind of more of a general feel. But the procedures, it's kind of like the letter of the law. They are derived from the policies, and they are not open to public scrutiny, and people must follow the procedures exactly. So in these procedures, like I've mentioned, it says that, boys can go into the girls' washroom, you can self-ID, people should not contact parents if their child is transitioning at school, but they encourage the teacher to basically direct the child to speak to any other school staff, anybody else but the parent.
And what I'm really surprised with I do a lot of work helping people who've had troubled pasts, and maybe they've had emotional pain and suffering, and help them get back to their true self and help them align with knowing how amazing they are. And I test for different things energetically, and I test for low self-esteem. And a lot of what this what is happening creates low self-esteem and confusion in children. But one thing I test for is self-entitlement. Are you overly self-entitled? Now, don't get me wrong. I've worked with a few people. I would deem them narcissists, if not sociopaths. But this behavior of assuming that you have more say than a parent, this is borderline personality disorder. And I know there's people out there who will say, you're not qualified to diagnose that. I'm qualified, more than qualified to diagnose when somebody's behavior is so offside, they're causing harm to another. And that's what exactly is what's happening to these children. And it's interesting when you mention Waterloo District School Board back in 2015. when they first introduced the sex ed curriculum, parents were going and speaking about the pornography that was available on the computers at school. And you watch those fat cats on the board of directors just sit there in the absolute arrogance of ignoring the parents. So what is being trained into their psyche that they think that they're above everybody else? So a lot of things are coming around, and they're going to change as more information comes out about just how sick this policy is. There's some different libraries at the schools, and I have a certain group that I organize once a month. And I went and looked at a room at a library. And when I was walking, she was walking me back to the room, I looked at a stand of books, and it said queer theory. And I started talking about the P, and I told her what it was, and she started downplaying. No, 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 it's on a spectrum. I said, no, it's not. And I can articulate this very well. Well, she kept trying to say, well, people are just curious. And I said, no, there's two, male and female. And I said, you guys should be charged because basically what you're doing is illegal. Well, then she started second guessing herself. When I try to drop some truths, I speak and then I give them a chance to breathe. We go back and look at the room and we come back out, and I said, you see all these flags? You're promoting all of this P. You guys could be charged for this. By the time I was done, she was leaning on the counter. And I could tell by her, I said, you've got little kids and you're teaching them to let an adult do what to them? And I don't pull any punches either when I talk. You're pretty straight up. But by the time I was finished with it, she's looking at me and I said, you know, you don't go and tell the rest of the people in this library that you work with because they will attack you. And she nodded. And the next time I went in, that book stand was gone. I went and looked around the library. So we can speak up, even not just to the school boards, but let them know that what they're doing is illegal. And what is really interesting, what I find is sometimes the parents don't fight this for what it is. They focus on the gender stuff, which is good. But people have to be idiots if they think there's more than two sexes. Like the male and female is the plant kingdom, it's the animal kingdom, it's humans, it's everything, right? But I pulled this off of the, what do you call it? The Red Cross website, and it says, what is sexual abuse? Non-touching. So this is what I think. Non-touching sexual abuse, being shown videos or sexual pictures, being forced to listen to sexual talk or comments about one's body, being forced to pose for seductive or sexual photographs, being forced to look at sexual parts of the body. These educators are guilty of child sex abuse. It is illegal.
That's right.
And this is where I think we need to go in and start fighting it on this level and letting them know that we're not tolerating this. And it is really interesting what I don't know what your experience, I'm going to ask you about this. How many of the people on this board are females?
I can't say off the top of my head the split, but I think there's more females than males on the board.
And we have to start asking why the females are pushing for this. And I've been doing this for a long time. I've been looking into this since 2012 and just trying to reach out to different government organizations or politicians. They just blow me off. Or if I've got a health minister in one province, they rotate that one out and put the next one in so that you have to start over again. You always have to start over, right? I call that the polypedo shuffle, but that's what they do. So this is such an organized criminal activity within Canada. But I like the fact that you're more contained in this area, because more people, if they stand up in this area and we start to see what's going on, we can learn how to, what do you call it, deal with it and let them know they will be held accountable. But there's nobody's accountable. You, I think you referenced the video with all the labor ministers that were going to protest the parents at the rally. Do you remember?
So I didn't reference that. I did say, I did briefly say that the unions are basically using their paying members for political ideology, and they're kind of exposing themselves.
Yes.
And it's interesting, the more this happens, I'm happy that these people are coming out and making these public statements because it just shows exactly who's involved. And I'd rather have it that way than be obscured. And even your definition, I was going to say, the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies, they say that child abuse includes non-contact offenses, such as exposure to sexually explicit material, sexual activity, and a child under the age of 16 cannot consent, regardless of perceived consent, and it's a criminal offense. Now, it's interesting because the way the politically correct culture is in right now, everybody's tiptoeing on these issues. It's just going to be a matter of time, and I believe the tide is turning. I mean, there was a ton of parents that came out. Even the Million March protest is a sign that the tide is turning, and this stuff is unacceptable, and people are beginning to come out and voice their opinions. And the Waterloo District School Board and the unions, and even Trudeau, because he made a statement as well on Women's Day, saying, and one more thing, trans women are women. I mean, we got a leader in this country. He cannot tell the difference between men and women, but he wants us to trust his leadership. And it's the same thing with the Waterloo District School Board. These people cannot tell basic, fundamental, biological difference. Every single person on planet Earth came out of a woman, and now they say something else and they want us to trust them? Absolutely not. It's not rooted in science. It's not rooted in biology. It's just rooted in nonsense, and it's got to be called out for exactly what it is. I am embarrassed on their behalf. I cannot believe that they have such little self-awareness. And believe it or not, I actually encourage them to keep saying the things that they're saying, because at this point there is no turning back. The pendulum is swinging back. People are becoming aware. I hope the unions come out. I hope the government continues to double down on their behavior that got them in the situation in the first place, because people are done. I'm done. Parents are done. Yeah.
But the problem is people don't have a language around healthy sexuality. When I talk healthy sexuality, I'm of the belief that every species knows how to procreate, that part of it, but the aspect of love and relationships, and there's no language around defining what the different ways of loving are. Like, loving a parent is different than the love of a sibling, which is different than the love of a pet, which is different than the love of community, love of self, love of God, source, whatever that energy is. But only one involves sex, and that's your romantic partner, when you're old enough to understand all the emotions and things that come with it, right? And all the consequences and even joy that come with it. But there's no positive dialogue anywhere about healthy relationships either. So when we start looking at that as well, that we're going to be able to, we won't need them anymore, because we'll be able to understand and communicate in a healthy way about what children need and what they don't need. And when we do that, I think what's going to happen is parents are going to be empowered, that they're going to say, no, you only talk to mom and dad about this, and be able to have the conversation. A lot of women my age, and even some younger than me, they describe what happened in their teens when they had certain talks with their parents, and the parents couldn't talk about it. Like, even when girls started menstruating, the mothers would just throw a pad in their hand and say, here, and walk away. Parents have to have these conversations, because if they're not, somebody else is going to. And that's what
100%.
I really hope that we start empowering the parents, right? But the teachers have to know, and the librarians have to know, and the school board directors have to know what they're doing is legal. It does constitute child sex abuse. So we're a race against time. But I think a lot of this is what they call the people in the higher echelons of society have been doing this to such a degree that they want to decriminalize it. So when this comes out, what they're doing, that everybody thinks it's normal. So we are in a race against time in a certain way. But I do think that we're going to win. So I was starting to look at what's happening here, and I came up with a source guide for parents, how to prioritize the children. They say children don't come with an owner's manual. What if they did, but they hit it on it so that they can manipulate and lie to them and betray them? And I think back to even the nursery rhyme crimes. Ring around the posy, husha, husha, we all fall down. Jack and Jill fell down the hill. I think of what we did with the fairy tale weddings. I think what we do with holidays and pretend that certain things exist, like the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus, and we condition them to accept lies. And I know a lot of kids have said to me, like, they're adults now, when they started asking the truth about Santa Claus, the parents said, no, he's real. And they reinforce the lies. I think we have to look at this in a deeper level. And I'm not suggesting you and I look at this at a deeper level right now, but what I'm saying in general, we have to look, how did we get into this mess? But so I'm looking at prioritizing the children. People aren't even aware of what the FBI pedo logos are, and what those are. When you can see them in schools, you can see them in advertisement, you can see them on toys, you can see them on clothing lines, but people aren't even aware of what their symbolism is. The Red Cross, the definitions that I read, public roles of CPS, exactly what you said. What they put on their websites is totally different than what they're allowing. In Durham region, had, Durham region had, I think, I'm not sure if it was Pride Month, but they had all those DQ story hours. It was
Yep.
CPS who was sponsoring them. So we got to start looking at who's not doing their job. And then for solutions, like an oath to do no harm, explain what the abuses are, and get these teachers to sign off that you're aware these behaviors are abusive. Cameras and tape recorders in the classroom. So many schools are saying now you can't have your phone at school. Why? Because they don't want you recording what they're doing. Know where your educators live. This is not a threat to the educators, but sooner or later, they're not going to let parents on school grounds. So you can't serve them when you sue them privately. So I think we've got a lot to talk about. Dialogue for the educators, that they know that you know what the gig is and that they will be held accountable. Dialogue for your children. People don't know how to say, set boundaries. Like, show the children you have the right to set a boundary. You have the right to say, no, don't let this happen. If somebody tries to talk you into this, you come and tell mom and dad. And it's important mom and dad don't get mad when it happens. They don't want to get their teacher in trouble. So you put the children in a conflicting position, but you let mom and dad know, and then you go and you handle it. There's a friend of mine in the States, her niece is visiting, and from another country, and she's learning English. But the assignment she got was to watch this movie and do a book report on it. And it was all the violence in Colombia, and it was the guerrillas, and it was people beating up their wives and their children or whatever. And this woman was watching it with her niece and trying to help her, be able to translate it. And she's watching it. And she goes, no, we're not watching this anymore. And she went to the school and just said, that's inappropriate. She called the father, and because he's in Colombia, the father and mother, and said what this movie was about. He called the school and said, this is not appropriate. You let me know what books or what movies you're going to ask her to do reports on. So there's ways that we can start to see exactly what you're saying. They're making it so obvious now, but there's ways people can work together and just say, this is not happening anymore, right? Advice for dating teens, we never see that. And setting intentions for your family. Like, everybody, so many families are encouraged not to get along or not communicate, or they're so busy with the lifestyles that are forced in Western society. So there's a lot of things that we can do. But so I was going to ask you about education. Have you heard about the D2L program in school? It's called the Learning Software App for all the schools in our region. It used to be Google Docs, but it was developed in Waterloo region. Are you familiar with that?
No, I do know the company Desire to Learn. It's over here downtown Kitchener, but I wasn't sure what they're doing or what the program is about. But I did want to mention a lot of the things that you were mentioning. It's all about holding these educators accountable.
Yeah.
And for parents, I gotta say, it was something that I encouraged even during my speech. Parents have that opportunity. It's the golden opportunity to spend time with the kids. A very, very simple thing you can do is take your kids off the tablet, take your kids off the phone, take your kids, minimize the screen time. I can't say the difference is night and day, and that helps the kids a lot in terms of the anxiety that they feel and the depression. Go outside, take your kids outside, do activities, get them tired and put them to bed. It's not a problem. This is not rocket science, but, I think parents are overworked as well. And I get that, parents are overworked and bills are going up and all this stuff. And you have to find a balance. Parents need to find a balance. There needs to be a priority. And if this is really that big of a deal to parents, and if they're really that concerned, I do believe I've spoken to many parents, a record amount of parents have pulled their kids out of schools for private education. So obviously parents are not complacent in this, but I consider every parent, take that responsibility, spend time with your kids, because it starts at home. Talk to your kids about whatever questions they have. Don't have to get mad if the questions are inappropriate that they're asking. Hey, at least they're telling you and what's happening.
Yes.
And then you can say, where are these questions coming from? You don't have to get mad, but it just gives you like a flag to just investigate it further. Maybe something's happening at school and they're getting these ideas, because the school knows that the parents have a lot of say. And this is exactly why they try to drive a wedge between the parents and the students. And yeah, it's the perfect opportunity for parents to get involved. Parents need to call the teachers. They need to stay on top of what's happening at the school. Don't worry about hurting their feelings. I mean, at the end of the day, I think about it this way. Why allow a school to do inappropriate things and then you call them out and you're worried about hurting their feelings?
Yes, that's
It's
wrong.
absurd. Yeah.
And that's great. I really like how you pointed that out, because one of the practices that I share with people, when you're setting boundaries, you can't care about the other person and set a boundary at the same time, because it's an internal conflict. So when the sex ed came out, they were also promoting the tolerance. Everybody be tolerant. But the idea was the tolerant was you be tolerant while we do this to your kids. So you cannot have a conflicting I'm not going to say agenda, but you can't have a conflicting intention. No, I'm here to protect my children. That is what I'm going to do. You are the adult here. You have a job to do. You've overstepped your line. You have no business discussing this with my child. If this continues and I hear about it one more time, I will sue you for this, for harm you've caused my child. And I can show all kinds of literature from the Ontario government of the harm that's caused by sexualizing children. I've been escalating them since 2012. And in 2015, they came out with a report. They copied it off of mine, but it's never okay. And they outline the consequences of sexual abuse. And that's what this is. So we can hang them with their own literature if we need to as well, right? But that's exactly it. You can't set a boundary and care about the teacher's feelings, because the teachers are master manipulators. And you can hear them even now. You hurt my feelings. And right? So what does that mean? Is that a crime? And even sometimes I get told, if I swear, oh, you just swore. And like, what does that have to do with anything? That's not the crime that we're dealing with, right? It's interesting in Canada, in Ontario, I don't know if it's all of Canada, but they are so organized behind the scenes that all of these groups are working together. And I'll give an example. I know of somebody who went on a trip, and they flew out of Pearson. And when they came back, customs grabbed them because they said, you have parking or traffic tickets in your region of Waterloo. The customs officials at the airport held him. They called the region and asked, do you want to come and get him at 3 a.m? They could have thrown him in jail. Since when do the customs officials work with local police? If people don't realize that we are under attack in so many ways trying to confine us, they're missing the big picture. And I had heard this, what he had said. He said that this guy threw the book at me. He said, I had my dog in my lap. He goes, my dog's like 35 pounds. Like, he just lied about everything. But they put out an arrest warrant for traffic tickets, but they won't deal with these teachers who are promoting this. Like, it's
Yeah,
insane, the entire system.
their priorities are definitely misaligned on this. They've been ideologically captured as well. I've spoken to police officers, and the best answer that I've got when I try to submit a police report is, you got to go speak at the school board, and the political landscape has to change for us to do anything. And
And
the
that's
police
not the truth.
officers,
They're just as cowardly. And they're the ones who are protecting at the DQ story hour. They're the ones who are protecting the people shaking their stuff in front of the kids. And even when you look at the parades, they're the ones protecting the ones who are naked and dancing in the street and doing the deeds, right? They're the ones. So they've got their priorities wrong. When you look at the International Association of Chiefs of Police, I think it was 2014, they all endorsed a program called Assisted Outpatient Program. So I don't know if the conference was in Florida, in the Caribbean somewhere, I can't remember, which I'm sure taxpayers paid for. But what they've come out and said, that if anybody's deemed to have mental illness, they can lock you up for 6 months, no questions asked. So they are responsible for not following the law. They are responsible for not understanding what human rights are. They couldn't tell you what your rights are. I know this cop, and he told me that he was down in Ottawa for the 30 days of the trucker rally. And I know he's not, because he's a neighbor and I saw his car. He turned around, he goes, if I block this sidewalk here, I can be charged. And I said, I'm not having this conversation with you. What now? Traffic laws supersede human rights? Like, we're not having this conversation. So they're getting indoctrinated to think that we're the enemy, the people are the enemy. And sooner or later, this whole system, I think, is going to collapse, because why are we paying these people to imprison us?
well, this
Right?
is the funny thing, is that I think the police definitely has a role to play in protecting. I think they got to get their priorities straight.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that, I know there's a lot of internal conflict over there as well. From what I've been told, it's usually the higher ups at the police that are uh, captured, and the people
Yes.
lower down, they're trying to just do their jobs. So there's huge internal conflicts over there. I know there's internal conflicts at the school. Obviously, teachers don't want to be associated with grooming kids. This makes everybody look bad. But the leaders, they just keep pushing this. And I actually wasn't aware just how much collusion there seems to be, because I thought, these unions and the government are kind of supposed to, uh, the unions are supposed to represent the workers. And, but it seems to me like they're all protecting the worst of the worst. You got that, the transgender teacher, Busty Lemieux, that was up in the Peel School District, I believe. And, the unions, they're protecting her. The school districts are foaming at the mouth, waiting to see if maybe they can hire her or him. And this is like a virtue signal thing where look how tolerant we are. We are the most tolerant. And they really, it's become ironically, uh, they're tolerant of intolerance, and they're not actually, they're not inclusive, um, in thought. They want to be diverse and inclusive in terms of how people look, which is very stereotypical, uh, dare I say, even racist to think like that. They're not interested in diversity of thought
No.
and all of that. It's all superficial stuff, and it's all coming to the surface right now. I was not aware, even with this recent thing, when the unions came out and they got their paying members to register for counter protest, defying parents who want to protect their children from ideological ideas that are propagated in school. I mean, that was crazy to me, the fact that they're doing this, but they're just exposing themselves. And these
Yes.
people, I believe they're predators, and anybody who
Yes.
exploits a child, anybody who has conversations with minors, who takes an interest in their sexuality, who wants to affirm them and celebrate all these things, there's a safe space for them. And I do believe in safe spaces. It's called a jail cell. That's the safe space where they belong.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of behavior that these people are celebrating and pushing. And everything has to do with sexuality around minors, and it's completely inappropriate.
I I couldn't agree with you more on that. And I think this is what we're starting to see, that they are predators and they're hired because they're predators. So we need to start looking at what the criteria is for hiring and what their procedures manuals are. And when people say that, oh, you have no business looking at that in CPS or the police, we pay your salary. And for anybody who thinks we don't pay the salary of the police, we pay their salary. We pay their portion of their pension. As taxpayers, we pay their owner's portion of the pension, and we pay your benefits. And if anybody thinks that you work for the police, you don't. It's the people who pay your salary. And I think they've really got almost like an inverted hierarchy. So they think they work for the top, and it's not. The people are at the top. I created this visual aid. I don't know if you know the chakra system, 7 energy wheels. So this is known in the East and in Indian energy work. So with each of them have a significance in the human body. But what they did was they took the energy. So I'll give an example. Your spirituality is at the top and your physical needs are at the bottom. What they did was they inverted that, and now your physical needs are at the top, your spirituality is up your butt. But the second one, the orange, is your sexual energy. So when they have, the first one is physical needs, the vid hit, what did people do? They ran out and bought toilet paper because they're inverted. The second one is the sexual energy. And I'm not making this as a political statement, but when Donald Trump was inaugurated in 2019, 3 million women gathered down at the mall with vagina hats on their head. Like, so people are being manipulated on so many levels. It's insane, right? When you're talking about the unions, there's a woman named Patty Coates. She's the president of the Federation of Labor. And what she was talking about, this is one of the things I went through what they were saying. As allies of those who protect workers' rights, kids' rights, trans rights, and our LGB community, we feel it's important to come together. They only care about the workers' rights, the right to do what they want to your children. So I went through and listened to all of the speakers and just jotted down notes that I thought were significant. But you're right. And I think when you say they bring the union workers out, I think the union workers are Antifa. because there was, at the rally that you were at and I was at in Kitchener, they were not Antifa, but I did notice, I was standing closer to that side, you were closer to the stage, but I did notice all of a sudden a woman comes out on a microphone to drown out your microphone. And then another woman came out, but everybody else was just holding signs. So they did organize. They had 2 women come out. But it's interesting, even this report with the union leaders, I went through and looked at all the 126 people, and 74 of the 126 people are women. That's almost 60%. So we really have to look at the women's role in this. Why am I saying this? Because as it comes to a head, they're going to all play victim and start crying and whining and moaning. So there's a statistic in Canada that says 99% of sex offenders are male. But they also have a 40% recidivism rate, which means those who are abused abuse others, 40%. And they say 75% of the victims are females. If that's the case, then 40% of the perpetrators are females. Like, so women are going to lie through their teeth. And why I'm saying this to you, I want to kind of give you guys a bit of information, just so that if it does come out and they start accusing you and playing the victim and saying they were abused, they've got more say than you guys don't fall for that. So it's really important that you look at how many layers of the system this is happening. So back in 2013, 2 universities, one in BC and one in Halifax, during the Frosh Week, you know what Frosh Week is in universities?
Yep.
What they were doing. So they had the kids out chanting. They were pro-rape chanting minors, because they're looking to see which kids' eyes light up and which ones are not into it. So they're selecting them based on what they will do, even in the university level. And I think those are the people that get these positions. They know they're going to play to go along. So we have a lot to look at, and I'm not asking you to jump on board with what I'm talking about, but I just want to put more information out there that people understand this is bigger than anybody thinks. The children are the commodity.
Well, when I was in Toronto for a protest with Billboard Chris and Josh Alexander, the president of COOP, which is, I believe, the biggest union, they don't only represent teachers, QP, but they represent other workers as well.
Canadian Union of Public Employees. So it's
Yes.
Canadian-wide, that group.
So the president, I believe his name was Fred, he was out there chanting, all the Antifa chants, go home fascists, etc. I mean, these people, when you say they're Antifa, from my personal observation, I mean, I really cringe when I see grown men fighting for knowing the sexuality and taking sexuality
And you
in
should.
kids. And it's, it's a red flag. It's cringy to see. I'm just wondering why. And, when I see that kind of behavior, just mindlessly chanting, going over there, standing in solidarity with his fellow people, I don't know if
he was
they
mindlessly. He was intentionally.
Yeah, they just chant the things, like they don't think about the meaning, is what I'm trying to say.
I think they do. I think you're giving them, we give them way too much credit. I'm not trying to contradict what you're saying. They know exactly what they're doing. When this flag came out, this was during the sex ed protest in 2015. There's a lot of Muslims at Queen's Park. Sherry Denova held the flag up this way. She was a lesbian Reverend MPP.
Mm-hmm.
She got busted, I think, for bringing cocaine in her Bible across the border, and she still got to be in politics. Like, it's insane, right? So she's holding the flag up this way with 2 drag DQs, and one of them was called Twisted Fister, which means you know where that goes, right? Anyways, she did this, and then all of a sudden she's laughing and she flipped it over. That's where I saw them do this. Everything is intentional that any of these do. Because if you weren't interested, you'd say, no, I gotta learn about this, or I gotta find out more about this, or I want to do my own research on this. You don't just go and start chanting because somebody says that they're a trans, what have you. And even there's a lot of, I'm going to call them middle-aged white women. When this came out in 2015, so many women on Facebook, so I hope I don't gross you out when I say this, so many middle-aged women would say, I'm straight, or hetero, but I support LB, whatever. So then I would open up the tab underneath them and I say, do you like anal sex? And well, they would just lose it and block me. So they can't talk about it, but those women want to go along to get along. But what is the cost? The cost isn't to them. The cost is to the child that they're promoting this and supporting this with. He's in charge of QP. He's in charge of CUPE. He has a role for the Canadian Union of Public Employees. He has a role to play, but it's not about any kind of sexuality. It's about what do we need within our infrastructure? What do we need within our education? What do we need within town limits? What do we need with water management? Like, there's got to be like, what employees do these people cover? We need to look at what's going on there. Are they getting what they need, or all they are focusing on is this trans stuff? Like, we got to really start asking more questions, is where I'm at. I've been doing this a while. I don't give anybody the benefit of the doubt. I just come right out and ask now. So
Well,
whoever these
you're
unions,
100%. Yeah, you're 100%. They definitely know what they're talking about. And
yes,
they, when they say they are intentional about it, they don't want to have conversations with the other side. You know,
and
they're
we're not going to have them
ideologically,
with them.
yeah, they're
We have to,
ideologically captured. There's no conversations, and this is not a debate. When I speak at the school board, I'm not debating my ideas. I'm not
yes,
opening up the conversations. What do you think? I want to know why they're doing what they're doing. The debate is over. They've done. They've made it clear. They've celebrated. They've affirmed. They've encouraged. Why are they doing this? It's not a debate. Oh, is it good? Is it that? And there's a lot of women too. I think a lot of women, because women are more empathetic and compassionate,
they can
uh,
be.
they
Hang
can
on,
be.
we're wired, but it doesn't mean all women are.
I think some women, you know, they also have this weaponized, they got their compassion and empathy weaponized, right?
Oh,
Where they're
totally.
trying to appeal to their emotions and say, look, you can, even good women, you know, where I will push back on what they say, you know, if they're like, oh, but if this person, it's like, no, I know you will be uncomfortable if a man goes in your change room. And that's the way you should be. Don't be ashamed to say it, you know, and as soon
Yes,
as you push back on how polite they're trying to be and you just encourage them to be stronger, they will be stronger. There's a lot
yes,
of that stuff. And one more thing that I wanted to say, uh, these people, when you look at the statistics, they always talk about increased anxiety, depression, and suicide. They always talk about it. And even the director of the Waterloo District School Board, he talks about it. And he says, because these things are increased, we need to double down on our behavior. So under their leadership, you get increased numbers of anxiety, depression, and self-deletion. And then your remedy is to
more
do
of
it
it.
even more,
Yeah.
which is crazy. And
What if
if
it's
what
not
he's saying
crazy?
is true,
What if it's not crazy? What if it's sinister?
well, I mean, I'm talking from a normal person's perspective, you know,
Okay.
like if what he's saying is true, how can he be put in a position of leadership? And he always urges the students, you know, if they're vulnerable, we're learning from you,
Yeah.
take the lead. How can a person who's vulnerable take the lead, right? It just goes to show he has no idea how to direct these kids. He's just shrugging his shoulders and be like, well, take it from here, kids, go talk to a school staff, not the parents. They never encourage the students to talk to the parents first. It's always somebody else at school.
And
So
then go
yeah,
ahead.
under their leadership, these rates have skyrocketed. These people need to be removed from these positions immediately. They're causing damage. And I'm starting to believe, according to their ideology, that this is a feature for them, not a flaw. It's actually a
Yes.
good thing because now they get to say, look, we're trying to help out. You know, there's a lot of kids that are struggling, and they just create even more struggling kids under their
Yes.
leadership. These people need to go immediately.
They need to go, definitely. It's really interesting when you say, so when you say that, they say, oh, you take the lead. What, one of the goals, I'm going to use the word Satan, whether that's the right one or not, but is to get you to betray yourself. And that's what these people want the kids to do, because if you did it, they say, well, you like it because you did it, right? It was your idea. So they turn around and shame them even more. But one of the fellows who was speaking, let me find
By the
his name.
way, that
Yeah.
them taking the lead, that's also a lie. So he put out this strategic planning strategy for the upcoming years. And on this, you know, he has this hierarchy of like the directors at the top and the teachers, blah, 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 and then the students. And he's like, I want to make this fluid. I want the students to rise up. We want to hear from the students and, take the lead, etc. This is not what's happening. What is actually happening is the director and the people on top, they make poor decisions. And once they get called out on these extremely poor decisions, what they do is they conveniently go back and use the kids as a shield. That's what
Oh,
they do.
totally.
And then they go back up, they make the bad decisions, they lead everybody in the wrong direction, then they go back down and be like, well, the students are taking the lead. We're just trying to learn from them. This is
Sociopathic behavior.
yeah,
Like it's a personality defect that you could do that to another child, especially a vulnerable child who hasn't got the emotional or the mental capacity to understand the games of these manipulators, right? How do you break what's perfect in a child? You lie to them, you manipulate them, you shame them, you guilt them, you try to convince them truth is or lies are truth. This is how you break the psyche of a child. And that's what I find I worked with a lot of people who were hurt as children, but I work with them in their adult. And that's what a lot of it was. They didn't trust themselves. So when you can break a society, they have to come to an expert for help. And then that creates an imbalance of power in your society. Are you familiar with Ben Shapiro? He's a public
I
figure in the
am.
States, Jewish. So he wrote a book called Brainwashed. And in that book, he said child S abuse is the cornerstone of Western society because a lot of them have anxiety and they get what they call mental illnesses, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, addictions, all kinds of problems, right? So that's what he said. But then he said they also get stomach problems because they're always anxious. So now their stomach has problems. So now they need the medical community. They need the mental health community. So all of this, and then if they can't have healthy relationships because they triggered, now you might need law enforcement if they get into a domestic situation when they're older. The whole system is inverted to destroy the child and make the child, what do you call it, like a client of the system for life. Same as what pharmacy does, right? Like that industry, the medical. So when we start to see this on a grander scale, what I like is the idea that we open our eyes and see this, because when we put light to it, that diminishes the darkness. What you're saying about these teachers, one of the, or what these higher ups are saying, this one fellow spoke at that union Zoom call. His name is Don Frey. He says, affirming worship in Durham, a diversified as religious thing, try to have religious opposition to the far right with love, inclusion, and positivity. So basically they're taking love, inclusion. We're all one, so we should all be having sex together. So they're taking love as love. So I think what it is Satanism. He said they had 5 to 6 events in Durham and they have 22 places of worship. Do you know who Ben Levin is? Benjamin Levin. He was the deputy minister of education that helped co-create the sex ed curriculum. In 2015, he was on trial. And what had happened, undercover police officers, I think it was in Australia, had him on chats in his private group. And he was talking about getting kids ready to be raped by him. You know who he was talking to? The mothers, to get the daughters ready to be raped by him. So I went on his website and they're asking kids questions. I don't have the sheet handy with me right now, or I'd read it verbatim, but it says, ask children questions. Ask, what's the difference between love of your parents and romantic love? And then other questions would be innocuous. What's the purpose of the sun or something? And then it comes out, and the one question was, if you were home alone and the phone didn't work and a robber broke into your house, where would you hide? So if they're coming on to the child and the child takes off, they know to go to look in mom's closet and then say, well, you must have wanted me to find you because you told me where to look. These people are sick beyond measure. And I know 40% of my understanding, 40% of these abuses happen when the children hit puberty. But there's no guidance for babysitters or siblings when that time comes, just to make sure that nothing is going wrong. So what was interesting, what you told me, that you went to police and CPS and looked for literature on abuse to protect children. What happened with that?
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. They got pretty much nothing. As a matter of fact, the police, when I went to ask them, they were going to send me away empty-handed, and I said, I'm not leaving this police station until I get literature, until I get something. Give me something, anything, and what they did, they had this pamphlet about online trafficking,
Exploitation.
etc.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
They
I
don't
even
know.
went over there, and sure, I took whatever they had, and I went back and I was like, well, what they're doing, what you're saying with the online is what's happening in real life, right?
They
Like
don't want
even
you to
your
see them.
online stuff is happening in real life. So, they it seems to me like their priorities are totally misaligned. When I went to the police, I tried to file reports as well, and I had books and like I named the books and I showed images from there and the content in the books, and I said, look, this stuff is inappropriate, and they wouldn't even. And I left it with him. He was hesitant to file it, and I said, I'm going to leave this information with you. If you do not want to file it, send me an email and tell me you don't want to file it. That's all I want. Tell me you're not interested, and that's fine. If not, just file it. If you're not going to do anything with it, just let it sit on record. You do not have to do anything with it. If you feel like this is a non-issue, tell me it's a non-issue, but put it in writing.
Yes.
I went back and I had another conversation and I asked them, hey, can I get a follow-up on this? And they're like, what happened? When did you come in last? What's your name again? Yeah, we don't
Yeah.
have anything on record. They just tossed it. They don't care.
They lie. It's interesting. I've worked with some parents that have had their children taken through CPS because let's say the parent says that my child is saying they're being abused by this other parent or somebody else. Next thing you know, that child is in the custody of the parent who's doing the abusing. And exactly what you just said. So you file a police report and then you go back for follow-up, but then you get another officer and you got to say it all over again. And then you go back for more follow-up and you get another officer and you got to say it all over again. So they intentionally spin your wheels. So you tell me the police don't know, they're not complicit in child sex abuse. And how many of them are the ones that go with CPS and do the brawn work of getting those children away from the parents? So we've got a lot of people have a lot of answers to, they need to start providing answers. And if they can't, I think we can. One of these things I was talking about here, where am I? One of the things I was talking about, and this is what I'm calling a source guide, is an oath to do no harm. But I talk about what harmful physical abuse is. I talk about emotional abuse and I talk about sexual abuse, but I've got like 2 or 3 pages. And I think this is going to be a great guide for parents to read. And they're going to see that, yeah, these things are not acceptable behaviors. So what the problem is, I'm just going to hold this up. I don't want to say the words. But like, these are all the behaviors that are inappropriate. Now, why couldn't the police have something like this for the parents? Because they don't want them to.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I did want to give you a really quick summary or give the listeners a really quick summary on, give me 1 second, on what grooming is, because I don't think a lot of people know what it is and how to spot it. But I'm just going to talk about the overall steps and just describe them. I'm not going to go into detail
Thank
if
you.
you're going
This
to
is a
post
great
this
point.
on YouTube. So the first step, and by the way, this sequence, it doesn't have to be in this order. So the first step is targeting, where the perpetrator identifies a potential victim. They may choose children who are vulnerable, isolated, or seeking attention and validation. The second step is building trust. The groomer initiates contact with the child, often pretending to be friendly and caring. They may use online platforms, social media, or even in-person interactions to establish rapport and gain the child's trust. We see this a lot in schools as well, where teachers are trying to gain the trust and the institution is trying to gain the trust. Establishing a connection is 3. The groomer works to create a close emotional bond with the child. They may provide attention, compliments, gifts to make the child feel special and valued. Again, we see a celebration at the school. These children are very special. They're allies. It's part of the family. Number 4 is isolating the child. So the groomer may attempt to create distance between the child and their friends, family, and other protective figures. This isolation makes the child more dependent on the groomer and less likely to disclose the abuse. You see this in the school where they have a written in procedure not to tell the parents because the parents are harmful. This is isolation of the child.
Yes.
Desensitization. The groomer gradually introduces sexual content into their interactions with the child. This can be done through discussions, explicit content, or sharing inappropriate material. The aim is to normalize these topics and behavior. Of course, this is it happens every time we see the flag. The flag is everywhere. You know, these conversations,
Totally.
organizations are involved, constantly promoted. You got the clubs, right? Testing boundaries is the next step. The
Totally.
groomer may start testing the child's reaction to sexual advantage or suggestive conversations. They may gauge how far they can push the child without encountering resistance or disclosure. And then the final step is exploitation. Once the groomer believes the child is emotionally and psychologically conditioned, they must escalate the abuse to involve sexual contact or exploitation. This can include physical abuse, sexting, or other forms of sexual misconduct. And I also want to add this exploitation is also medical exploitation, where kids are being put on puberty blockers, they're being put on hormones, they are having their bodies mutilated, they are
Totally.
being they can't have kids, they're being sterilized, and these are lifelong psychological and physical ramifications. And this is and the other exploitation too is just being a lifelong patient of the pharmaceutical industry
Totally.
with all the different problems that will arise with the infections, loss of sensation, nerve damage, not to
Can't
mention
connect
psychological.
lovingly when you're intimate and creating the life of another. Like, there's
Yeah.
so many implications. Exactly what you're saying. I would love that list. I'm going to include that in my guide. I never thought of grooming. And what's I meant to mention this earlier. I was watching a show in the United States, and there was a police officer who worked within the exploitation unit. And she said in her state, it's not illegal to groom a child. They only investigate after the abuse. So you can never get ahead of it. That's something we need to look at in Ontario as well. Is there a crime for grooming children? So sooner or later, so why, if you can come up with this list and I can come up with my list, why can't the police come up with a list and just give guidance? There's not one organization that I'm aware of in Canada that parents can go to find out what all the abuses are. What is emotional abuse? You know, what are examples of physical abuse? And parents have different, ideas themselves of what's abusive or not. But if you want to go and beat the crap out of your kid and you don't think it's abusive, it's your right. We're going to start seeing those parents for who they are. So this is first is the school, and then it's guidelines for the parents, because the parents are never taught how to create healthy, well-adjusted children so they grow up to be functioning adults. Like, there's so many things that are missing in the education system, but exactly what you're saying, they bring this in instead. This is what you're raising a child to think. They're just gonna be little sex machines. So,
Yeah.
so this is intentional, right? I would love that list on your grooming. That is something, I don't know why I didn't think of that for myself for this guide.
Yeah, so all of these things that I'm telling you, this including this list, I just want to let your viewers and listeners know. I have a YouTube channel dedicated to this. I follow the school boards closely. It's called Beyond the Rift. It's on YouTube. I have the protest speech up there. I have an interview with CTV News. I have the delegations that went viral as well. One was on Fox News. It got international attention as well.
Right on.
Put the school board on the map. I talk about this list. I go through all the points. It's all spelled out, by the way, and I give examples what grooming is. I talk about what the school board is doing, the events that are happening, the celebrations that are happening. A recent one is, the director sent out an email to the students, a video public statement, basically asking students to stand in solidarity against parents, basically, against anybody opposing them, asking vulnerable students to reach out to teachers, not to the parents, all of this stuff. Anything that happens at the school board, I follow closely. And if parents take an interest, if parents want to know what's happening, if parents want to know how to formulate their opinions or how to understand how to speak against this, I mean, I love doing this. I love empowering parents and kids.
Yes.
If parents want to know about the school books as well, it's on there. If parents want to know about the indoctrination, I have a podcast too that's on the YouTube channel. I talk about anything from how these people are being elected, what their priorities are, how they function, the material there, the books. pretty comprehensive. I
Excellent.
update the videos. They're probably like 5 minutes. I try to keep them short. The podcasts are between 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes long. If people want more details as well, very interesting guests of people who have been part of the system who were canceled as well. So yeah, all of this list, all this information, I put it out for free, and I highly encourage anybody to check out Beyond the Rift, YouTube, Spotify, Twitter, my Twitter thing. I put stuff all the time.
I'm going to have you include all of those. Have you send those to me in an email, and I'm going to include them in the description box because I think it's imperative that parents find you. And when we talked, I said this, I also like your age because you are the age of the parents. So I think they will really relate to you because you're almost working in solidarity, knowing you're all under attack for trying to stand up and do the right thing for your children, right? So I think that's fantastic that you're doing this. I didn't realize you made it to Fox. I know people who've been speaking up here, and they made it to Newsmax, and they canceled their video, and they're talking about what's going on and what they were doing, trying to have Justin arrested for different things, and Newsmax took it down. So there's a lot of shenanigans on many levels here, but what you're doing is the right thing, getting the word out there, giving the parents a resource, because if the educators can't, then you don't need them anymore for certain things.
Yeah. And one more thing, just as a general thing, I want parents to pay close attention. Actually, I want Canadians to pay close attention. In Canada right now, there are anti-family, anti-individual programs being promoted. One of them, of course, is transitioning minors, which I just talked about, the grooming and all the side effects, lifelong, psychological, physical. Okay. So this in Canada seems to be okay. The other thing in Canada is they're trying to expand the MAID program, which is a self-deletion program, to include what they call mature minors. Now, this definition is on a slippery slope if you can include something like mature minors, but they want to include mature minors and mental health into the self-deletion program, right? The destruction of kids, destruction of family. And then the other big issue, obviously the destruction of family, and of course, anti-child, is abortion as well, which is the politically correct way of saying killing kids. And we've got major problems in Canada. And, the government, the current government, they are doubling down on this. And I'm happy they're doing it. Like I said, I hope they continue down this path, double down on this, because people need to wake up. People need to say, why are these things being promoted and celebrated in Canada? Because we are a great country. We have a lot of resources. There are great people here. We can have a great culture, and we can promote family values. We can promote growth and all of this. But instead, we focus on promoting destruction, self-destructions. All these things are empowering. So as an overall part of the bigger issue, if you zoom out from this gender ideology, which I really specialize in, just know that I'm sure people feel the pressure to basically self-destruct. And I want to encourage people not to do that. I want to encourage people just to go outside and just spend time with their kids.
Yes.
Just the simple things. That's what's important.
And spend time with
Because
nature, connect with
exactly.
that true consciousness, because they send frequencies through the electronics that can make you suicidal. There's all kinds of things. They said subliminal messages. It's called radio broadcast technology. So we have to be aware of everything around us because we don't know all the different ways we're getting attacked. But exactly what you're saying, spend time with your family. It was interesting when this pandemic hit. I walk out in nature quite a bit. And what I was seeing at that time was families getting together and just walking out in nature, and the kids would be picking up leaves or acorns and the parents were talking to them. So I saw a lot of really strong connection. I know there's others that aren't, but everybody has the opportunity to do this and connect and just go in and see what's natural. Go to a hobby farm, or, go see some animals that you maybe wouldn't normally see, and just, get outside. That's the big thing. Exactly that.
Exactly. The opportunities are always there. And the main responsibility in this is to the parents. Do not, I've had people, get married, and they told me, David, I don't know how I feel about having kids in this society. I tell them, don't let the crazy people dictate what you can do.
Right.
If you want to have kids, have kids. Your priorities should not be their priorities,
Yeah. That's what
especially
they
if they're
want.
inverted. That's what they want, right? Don't give them what they want. Just chill out, get off the screen, go outside,
Yes.
enjoy time with your family. If this is what you truly believe, it is your responsibility to participate in your own rescue. People
Yes.
need to participate in their
In your
own
own
rescue.
wellness.
Yeah. If they really believe that family is important, then spend time with your family. If you really believe that, spending time going outside is healthy, go outside. Eat better, and just simple things. Just keep it simple.
Yeah.
That's my message to anybody that wants immediate solution. And
Yeah.
of course, the other thing that you can do if you want to take a step further, right? As you go outside and you think about these things, and your mind becomes healed and better and you see things for what they are, because you're not constantly connected to social media BS, you know, take action against it. There's a bunch of parent groups, go delegate at a school board, get involved, write the Minister of Education, get out for a protest. There's many things that you can do as a parent, but
And
you can
even
start today.
non-parents. Yes,
Even on
definitely.
parents, grandparents. I know
If your
people who
heart's in
don't
the
even
right
have
place.
kids.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
they'll
don't
come
have
out.
children, but I knew I was
Yeah.
going to be in for a fight, so didn't want anybody to be at risk, right? What I love about what you
Yes.
just said, guiding the parents, and we were talking about this one day, so this is something else for parents to consider. And this woman who I've become friends with, her kids are in their teens, 13, I think, and 17. But she said to me, she goes, "How do I know that this LBG is really the P word?" She goes, "How do I know that?" And I looked at it and I thought, that is a great question. And then I went through and explained it. And then I showed the Red Cross, the definitions of it, being touching on all the exploitation. And I went through and I said, this is what they're promoting. So this is how you know it is that they're trying to groom the children. But she was very honest in her question. She goes, how do I know? She needs to know how to articulate it to be able to, if somebody asks her, to be able to say that this is why it qualifies for that illegal activity. So it's okay to ask questions, but ask questions from people that maybe are taking an interest and maybe can give you some insight, like yourself, right? Like you would be able to share insights in this. I can tell it just by the way you talk, and be able to guide them into where to go with this. But sometimes the best way to do is just step away from it, but schools aren't letting you. But exactly what you said, in your own personal time, create that space with your family, right?
Exactly. And a lot of these questions, a lot of the videos that I make are based on questions that people have, because they ask me and it's like, that's a great question. I'll
Great
just do a
topic.
video because I'm sure other people. So actually, I'm just thinking even with this, like I talk about it at length. I talked about the grooming process today, which was something somebody else brought up, right? Like, what is the process? Am I going crazy here? And I just made a video about it. And even this, how can I know that this is explicitly child targeting kids,
Definitely.
And even though I talk about it at length and pretty much all the videos, it's all about minors, right? It's all
Yes, and
about minors.
protecting
This is
them.
the first clue. The second clue is the isolation and the secrecy. This is how you know that they're targeting kids. I mean, everything. I mean, it's right in the title, LGBTQ.
Yes,
It's all about sexuality, right?
right.
This is
I
how you
agree.
know. This is the first step. But maybe there needs to be a video that just explicitly just says like,
This is
I
how
know
you
I've
know.
talked about it, but here it is again, just very bluntly. So
Yes,
yeah,
and that's what I think that gives people, when it's very direct. I like your communication style. When it's very direct, there's no mincing words. People can really pick up on the content. But David, do you have any last words for our viewers today? Anything else you'd like to share? I know you've shared a lot. And do you have an email that people can contact you at, or would you rather they contact you on social media, on your platforms?
yeah. So right now, social media is my main way. I'm considering setting up a website and an email because it seems like a lot more people. I've been contacted on social media. I love hearing from people. Great comments on my YouTube videos. Lots of intelligent people. Great
Excellent.
insight. Yeah, great questions. And I try to respond to every single person over there. Uh, I Before I go, I just want to encourage everybody uh, by saying that the tide is turning. Uh,
Yes.
a lot of this is being exposed. This Million March protest is a testament that people have had enough. Parents are waking up. There's a lot of internal battle. make no mistake, the teachers are infighting. They don't want to be associated with this kind of behavior that the top brass is pushing down. There's infighting everywhere, but it's just important to not let yourself get affected. Don't let yourself be affected by just the words that they make up. Anything from believing that you're hateful, bigot,
Yes,
phobic, etc. Who cares? Who cares what they say?
it's
It
an
does
A.
not matter. Keep going forward, keep doing what you're doing, and find people, like-minded people to surround yourself with. We are going to win. And like I said, if you are interested in learning Beyond the Rift on YouTube, you're going to have it in your description as well. And I'm very happy. I just want to thank you once again for giving me this opportunity. Hopefully the things that I said will resonate with parents as well,
Totally.
and
And
with
thank
people
you.
everywhere.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate your insight. And what I like about what I'm seeing with you is you're showing people how to stand up, because you started from just being a concerned parent and you stood up and things are starting to happen. And I think you're going to be the beginning of the wave, or there's a big wave that's already happening, but you're going to be a big part of that. So if anything comes up again, maybe we can have another chat and explain even more of what's going on in the area so that we can empower our parents to know just what the game plan is. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you again.